It's Thursday, April 30, and this is your Barbados Today Evening News Update. Barbados is facing a double-digit economic decline, which could be as high as 13% as a result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Central Bank Governor Cleverson Haynes today delivered the sobering news as he presented his report card on economic performance for the first quarter. The economy declined by 3% in the first 3 months of this year, driven by a sharp decline in tourism. That sector contracted by 16.2%. The performance of the manufacturing and agricultural sectors were also weak. Governor Haynes says authorities are keeping a close eye on expenditure, and he stressed that government will need additional financing.
That we're looking at magnitudes of probably the order of like 300 million US from the multilateral institutions, which will come over a period of time. You won't get all of it at once. Obviously, there are still some negotiations that need to take place, but I think it's of that ballpark, because what you have done, as the Prime Minister announced last night, is that you have lost about 500 million, 550 million, I think was the figure she quoted, between revenue and expenditure. So in a sense, what we're trying to do is to recoup that amount to enable us to make sure that we can ride through this quite smoothly. And what it will do for us is that in the short term, it will raise our stock of debt, and then over time, we will be able to repair the situation through focused fiscal consolidation.
Governor Haynes suggested that the current situation could force government to go back on its decision to call on the central bank for support.
I think the circumstances that we face may force us to relook at that, but we have to look at it in the context of the overall program, and any revisiting would have to be time-bound. In other words, it would have to be temporary for a period of time to get us through this period, and not for a sustained increase in central bank financing. So it's something that we have to look at, bearing in mind the timing of flows that we expect to be able to help us get through this period. So sometimes you may not get the flow exactly at the point in time when you need it, but over time, and that's what the value and the virtue of having the program is, that you are able to say, well, this is my target, this is my fiscal target. With this target, I anticipate that this is going to be my reserve outcome, and therefore I can accommodate this level of financing from the central bank during this period in order to achieve these specific targets.
The International Monetary Fund is so assured of Barbados' economic plan that it is set to provide the island with an additional $280 million in financial support. This was outlined in a statement last night from the IMF following a virtual mission to the country headed by lead economist Bert Van Selm to discuss implementation of the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program supported by the IMF under the Extended Fund Facility. However, Van Selm said the IMF and Barbados has reached an agreement that was subject to approval by the IMF's Executive Board during its review in June. On completion of the review, the IMF said about US $140 million will be made available to Barbados, bringing total disbursement to the country under the program to just over US $285 million. In other news this Wednesday, the Ministry of Health is investigating the island's latest positive COVID-19 case. A 32-year-old Barbadian male tested positive among the 155 people tested yesterday. But according to health authorities, he had no travel history and no known contact has been identified so far. He brings the number of persons in isolation to 35 and the number of confirmed cases in Barbados to 81, 43 females and 38 males. The number of recovered patients remain at 39. Government has announced a plan to crack down on predial larceny. As she addressed the nation last night, Prime Minister Mia Mottley announced that a new predial larceny unit was being set up by the Royal Barbados Police Force. The move comes amid growing reports from farmers that they're losing much of their produce to thieves.
But we will also let technology work for us by allowing farmers to use drones so that they may use geofencing to protect crops and livestock.
The Alliance Owners of Public Transport lends a helping hand to public service vehicle drivers and conductors who have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. During a press conference this morning at BB Insurance Brokers, representatives from the body outlined plans to help PSV workers along with some commuters facing hardships. Director of AOP Craig Banfield told Barbados Today that they have been receiving several calls for help, and he appealed to corporate Barbados to contribute to the initiative.
Through the generosity of BB Insurance Brokers and Insurance Brokers Company, we have made it possible for the opportunity for food vouchers from A1 Supermarket to be distributed to some of the commuters whom the association has initially identified within the St. Michael South area, as those persons have been facing many challenges during this critical time of need. The St. Michael South area is not the only area, however, that we will be focusing on, and thus we continue to appeal to corporate Barbados to come forward for assistance to reach out to those communities that we have identified that needs assistance and help.
Meanwhile, AOPT's Public Relations Officer Mark Haynes says the sector has been severely impacted by the curfew and the association felt it had duty to provide support to its members. He, however, urged PSV workers to make their contributions to the National Insurance Scheme.
We, as an organization, we cannot give up on the workers in the sector. Both the conductors and the workers themselves are having a hard time, and we have to be there for them, notwithstanding that they have not contributed to the insurance scheme as they ought to, notwithstanding that they are still human beings. The sector in itself contributes to Barbados' GDP, and we cannot leave them by the wayside. As my colleague, Ms. Nixon, would have rightfully said, so we would come out of this, we would urge all in the sector to make a concerted effort to contribute to the NIS scheme so that when something happens, because we do not know when this will come to an end, and once this continues, it is going to put pressure on the sector going forward.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To regional news now, authorities at the University of the West Indies Hospital in Jamaica is taking issue with what it says is a premature release of Jodianne Ferron's autopsy results. We have this update from Kurt Wright of Television Jamaica.
Prominent physician Dr. Jeff DeFord, who was hired by Jodianne Ferron's family to observe her autopsy, yesterday shared that she died from a heart failure alone on the ground at the University Hospital. Dr. Ford further shared that Jodianne had a long-standing heart condition called cardiomyopathy, which makes it harder to pump blood to the rest of the body. In a release today, the UHII said it notes the misinformation in the media regarding the coroner's examination performed on Ms. Ferron yesterday. It said it strongly disputes the misinformation and premature sharing of autopsy findings prior to the determination of the cause of death. The UHII says the cause of death is usually pending further ancillary testing. That's a point which was also agreed to by General Surgeon Dr. Alfred Dawes while speaking on Hotline with Emily Shields this morning.
I think Dr. Ford is going to be asked to explain himself based on the allegations that he made publicly, and this is just the beginning of that. It's difficult to say at the time of autopsy because you're looking at the organs and the specimens that are removed, but you have not examined them under a microscope as yet. You have not done any toxicology tests and so on. So whereas you can look and say, all right, this heart looks big, it looks like there was heart failure because there's fluid in the lungs and so on. You still have to wait on the examination under a microscope to see exactly what it is. Any other tests such as toxicology and so on, liver samples and so on would have to come on board before you can really say this is the definite cause of it.
On the international front, there are reports that Canada is set to announce a ban on 11 categories of assault rifles and other weapons, including those that have been used in mass shootings. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has long promised to clamp down on firearms, citing a spike in gun crime. Officials said the new measures, which will apply to about 125,000 weapons, had been in the works for months and were not directly prompted by a shooting rampage in Canada earlier this month. That's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.